Reminder to our listeners that today's episode of Puck Pursuit is presented by Powerade Ultra, which has 25% more electrolytes than original Powerade. All right, Ryan, let's talk about the Lady Byng. So sportsmanlike, gentlemanly play, also mixed with strong numbers and strong acumen. The professional hockey writers vote on this. I start with Aleksander Barkov. And I want to pause for a moment and talk to you about him because you sat down with him earlier this year and had some sushi with him.
I
and
did. Delicious sushi.
You picked his brain, and the story that came out of it, I read yesterday in the prep for this podcast. And one takeaway is that the guy seems like a bit of a specimen. Like he knows exactly what, he's putting in his body. He seems to be, a guy who enjoys the weight room, and just cares about his performance on on a very detailed level.
Fun little behind the curtain in terms of that. Originally, I was going to have chicken wings with him because, as I learned, Tampere, where he's from, in Finland, home to, it's a little bit of a factory there. I'm trying to think of the other Finns off the top of my head. I don't think Laine's from there, I think, as well. Big chicken wing place, which is somehow at odds with my perception of Scandinavia and healthy Finns and Swedes and Danes just eating fresh fish out of the sea. No. They love chicken wings in this town and are apparently famous for it. So originally when I was talking with the Panthers, it was like, yeah, maybe we'll, have a chicken wing with them. I was like, oh, this would be super fun. And then word came back, it was like, he's trying to scale back. How about sushi? So yes, he does care about what's going into his body. I think he still sneaks the odd wing in for sure. But the biggest thing I would say about him, just in terms of what speaks the most about or speaks to just how good he is like, it's the old, how people who either play against him or coach against him, like his name comes up instantly as like, this guy is a nightmare, like just every single aspect of the game, both sides of the puck. It's like he's Patrice Bergeron, but, hit it a little earlier in his career and has this extra fancy shootout gear that Bergeron probably doesn't quite have. Like, there's just nothing about this guy that you don't love, except for the fact that he hasn't been in the middle of a playoff team yet because they just kind of can't get everything right around him. They're close, and I could see it coming together quickly, but that's, if you can consider that a knock against him, which is a bit of a stretch.
When he's playing 22 minutes a night, ended up with only, at this point in time, as we're talking, 4 minor penalties.
4 minor penalties.
While drawing 35, which is incredible. What's this guy doing to prepare himself? Because you saw him sort of right before the season. Like, did you get a grasp of like the secret behind Barkov?
Yeah, I think it's probably in line with the way most of these hyper-focused hockey players behave now. This is a guy, I will say, who saw Jágr come through there, who has the all-time legendary work ethic, and Roberto Luongo as well, a guy who is very, very, very well known in hockey circles as being super focused. And, the reason he's being able to make it to, I think he turns 40 actually on Thursday, especially in the later stages of his career, it's because of the time and care he takes. So there is that example. His dad is a professional player, as most people know, and is a coach now. So he has grown up steeped in it, and then got to Florida, and boom, there's this guy who's, I imagine when you first meet Jaromir Jágr, he's just doing squats and doesn't stop and just shakes your hand and says, "Hi, rookie, keep talking, move on." He's definitely absorbed that, and I know he's great tennis player. And one of the funny things he told me was like, so he lives in Boca Raton, which is kind of funny unto itself if you know a little bit, which I didn't until I got there, about sort of like the towns around where Florida plays, because Fort Lauderdale's like half an hour away, and that's kind of like where, if you're young and rich, realistically, that's where you would kind of find more fun. Boca Raton's kind of like for old people, but Barkov's like, I moved here when I got here because I followed, whatever Kulikov up there lived there, Cooley lived there, so I just moved there, and I like it. It's nice and quiet, and he can see there's basketball courts just close to his house. And he's like, I'm always seeing people playing out there, and he's like, he doesn't quite have the nerve to like join the game because he's just learning it. And it's funny to think of this guy who, he's absolutely jacked, 6 foot, whatever. Like, you kind of picture him as being like the sad kid in the street hockey game shooting rocks, being like, I wish someone would invite me to come play, right? It's like, dude, you look like you'd do just fine, but basketball's not his sport yet. So maybe I'll check back in with him in a couple of years and see if he actually joined the game.
Yeah, whenever I see those forward ice time totals of McDavid or Barkov or there are a couple like Sebastian Aho played like 28 minutes one game.
Yeah.
I always think back to the summer. Like, it sounds so like cliche and from a movie, but like when they're like knee deep in their fitness program, like that's when it sort of pays off,
Sure.
right? Because defensemen are used to that. They have sort of a slower pace, but like forwards, that those type of minutes, like in the third period, like it's got to be just a matter of like what's going on in your body versus mentally. Well, I guess it could be a combination.
It's definitely that foundation of what you've built, right? No doubt in the summer. And again, I think there's quite a little community in Tampere that he trains with in the summer, skates with, and realistically hits the sauna with after. So not a bad little, not a bad existence.
Yeah, a couple things I've learned about Finnish people. They love their saunas, they love their coffee, and as you mentioned, maybe they love their chicken wings too.
In certain parts, man.
All right, so the Lady Byng, that was a bit of a sidetrack, but the Lady Byng, I don't know. It seems like a Barkov's award to lose. I guess you could consider guys like Ryan O'Reilly, kind of a similar situation to Barkov, just toned down a little bit. He's got 12 penalty minutes. He's got the counting stats with 74 points versus Barkov's 94. He plays a lot. He plays a safe game. Both guys have long reach. Like, I feel like it's those two, and you could also reconsider William Karlsson, who won last year, who has the exact same amount of penalty minutes. Like, this shouldn't. I've ranted about this before, but this should be decided on by the officials or by people who are on the ice or near the ice day to day. Like, why is like literally what writers do is they look at penalty minutes. They maybe take in some intangible aspects. Obviously, the guy's got to be a star or close to a star in that like stratosphere, because it does mention in the description of the award that they have to be a strong player. But at the end of the day, like, it should be officials, because there's probably some guys that we think are nice, gentlemanly guys from afar on TV that just aren't at ice level, and vice versa.
I've never heard that idea. That's a great idea for the officials to decide this one, because it definitely is a tough one to quantify. I mean, we can get into it, but this in the Selke, I mean, there's more metrics for the Selke, but it does feel like one that, it's like if you're down there, you really, really understand more so than some of the other awards. Morgan Rielly's probably going to win one of these at some point too, because you're going to get extra points for being a defenseman.
Yeah.
Obviously, Brian Campbell's the only guy and forever to win it as a defenseman. I don't think Rielly will win it this year, but I do think one of these years he's going to end up winning it.
Well, and I know Marc-Edouard Vlasic, it was either, I think it was 2 years ago, was like coming down the stretch with 0 penalty minutes, and then he took like an over the glass penalty, and everyone's like, oh, you ruined it. And then
you unsportsmanlike.
but somehow like he ruined his case like in other ways. But I would like to see a defenseman win it again, because it's way more impressive if you're a defenseman who's defending, more susceptible to penalty minutes and unsportsmanlike activity. If you end up with under 10 minutes, that's incredible, especially if you're playing a lot like Vlasic used to. I guess he still plays a fair amount, but like he used to be an absolute workhorse.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think just that higher degree of difficulty at some point is going to work in Rielly's favor, because let's face it, he's going to be a guy we would assume who's going to continue to put 70-point, 65-point seasons up and have his name up in the Norris conversation as well. But I would think he's going to come away with one soon.